Nice. What is going on, everybody? It's Roku here, and we're back with some more League of Legends content. I noticed how you guys loved the top lane sort of general guide videos, so I'm coming at you guys with another general top lane guide. This video is going to contain 5 champions that are great to learn top lane with. So if you're someone who is trying to transition to top lane, or if you're already a top laner and you're looking to expand your champion pool to champions that can help you better understand the role, then this is the video for you. Or if you just want to see more Roku content, then okay, whatever, right? So yeah, I'm basically gonna give you guys 5 champions, and then I'll give you guys the pros and cons of them, and basically list them in the order that which I think are the best to pick up the role with, right? Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I know I'm like a broken clock at this point, but I really need you guys to show your appreciation for these videos, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, let's just get right into the video. Like, if you show that you like these videos, I'll make more of these kinds of videos, so, Before we get into the video, I do offer coaching, right? And basically speaking, to get coaching from me, you just have to join my Discord. I'll leave a link to it in the comments and in the description, and then just DM me that you want coaching. At the moment, I charge 30 euros for a roughly 2-hour long session, but this is subject to change in the future. I basically scale my price based on how busy I am during the week. So if I have a ton of requests, I might increase my price in the future, but yeah, that is to be seen. Anyway, before we get into the specific champions, I have to explain what a top lane champion needs to be good in solo queue, right? So, number 1, it has to be strong or at least playable in the early game. Top lane champions need to be strong early game so that you can support your jungler and support like plays around the river, right? You can't pick an early game champion like a Nasus or a Vladimir because you're gonna have no impact on the game early on whatsoever. The other bad part of these early champions is that they're completely horrible in lane. They have 0 kill pressure. Like, they can't actually kill the enemy champion if the enemy player is playing them properly, right? So you basically want to stay away from champions who are not the best early on in lane and who are kind of bad in skirmishes and etc. A top lane champion needs to be either insanely good in team fights or insanely good in split pushing, right? And these two things are very, very like complicated topics of their own, but basically they need to be, like a bit tanky-ish, have a lot of CC, and work well together with an organized team, or they need high damage, insanely good mobility, and good wave clear, So, yeah. Next point, they need to be able to do damage, especially when fed and well farmed. Top laners that don't do damage are basically just like, you can only play top laners that don't do damage in higher elos, basically, when your teammates know what they're going to be doing, right? But in most of your elos, in most of low elo, like, you need to have a top laner that can pack a punch on their own so that you can actually support your team with your damage as well, right? A top laner also has to be difficult to kill, right? You can't play a top laner that's just insanely easy to just one-shot and take care of, right? Top laners have to do damage and also be difficult to kill. This difficulty can come from them being tanky, right? Them being tanky champions, tanky abilities, etc. Or they can be so mobile that capturing them is difficult to begin with, like a Fiora or like a Kali or something. Like, you just can't lock them down. They need solid wave clear, like I mentioned earlier, because like top lane is like a very, very matchup specific lane. So you have to be good at like manipulating your minions in a way so that your wave's in a position where you can actually effectively play some of these matchups out, right? Like versus Darius, for example, if your mini wave gets frozen on his side of the lane, then you are guaranteed to die thanks to his Ghost Flash if you're playing certain champions, right? You have to know, you have to have tools in your kit that let you do wave clearing. And if you don't, you need to at least have a build path that gives you wave clear easily. Something like Iron Spike or, Tiamat, you need to have like you need to have either wave clear on your champion's kit, or you need to have like an easy access to it. Global map presence is always a positive thing, so champions that have global abilities are always going to be good in top lane. This one point is kind of crucial, but your top laner champion should not be a ranged character, right? Especially when you're getting into top lane. Ranged characters aren't exactly like the worst in higher elos, but the lower you go, the worse a ranged character can be. Ranged characters are very susceptible to getting camped, right? Once the jungler locks them down, they just die. And worst of all, ranged champions promote a lot of like bad habits, a lot of like insane habits and things that if a person gets used to playing ranged champions, they just make mistakes that like, no player in their right mind will make. Like sometimes when I play top lane in higher elos, right? And I play against the ranged top lane main, like you just crack them once and then they start making such asinine and stupid mistakes just because they're used to playing a ranged top laner, right? So learn top lane with melee champions first, and once you're in higher elos, you can choose whether you want to expand to ranged champions or you want to keep your champion pool to what you've gotten there with, right? And the last point, this is especially useful if you're trying to get into top lane, is you have to pick a champion that isn't hyper unique. What do I mean by this? You have to basically play champions that share at least a few conventions with other champions, right? If you play a champion that has his entire own playstyle, then his or her entire own playstyle, then like you basically have to either one trick that champion or you're not going to be good at that champion. And if you learn top lane with that champion, you will not be able to play any other champion. And an insanely good example of this is Singed, where Singed plays his own game. So basically, like, if you learn the game with Singed, you're basically crippled on any other champion because he just does different things than other characters, right? So try to stay away from hyper unique champions and ranged champions, right? I mean, ranged champions can be worked with if you're one-tricking them. A good example is Jace. Jace is an insanely good top laner if one-tricked, but this is a different list. Like that, my overall list of all top laners is in a tier list video. I'll leave a link to it in the description, but this is for champions you can learn the game with. Learn top lane with. Before we go into the list, I would like you guys to keep these points in mind because you guys might have questions and concerns in the comments, and I'd like to, knock a few of them out before we get into the list to begin with, right? Point number 1. For 99% of you, the meta does not matter, right? Like, let me repeat it again. The meta does not matter for 99% of you guys. What does this mean, right? So if I tell you guys to, for example, play Mordekaiser, right? And I'm not saying if he's in the video or not, right? This is just an example. Let's say I tell you guys to play Mordekaiser. Don't come to chat and be like, oh, this champion's bad in this meta. Like, brother or sister, whatever, right? Dude, Mordekaiser does not matter. I mean, not the Mordekaiser. The meta does not matter at all for 99.9% of you, right? Up until high diamond, diamond 2, diamond 1, and above that, the champions do not matter like that much, okay? The lower you go in your elo, and this is especially true for some of you guys because a lot of you guys are in like, below platinum, like overwhelming majority of you guys are platinum and below. At those elos, the lower you go, the less like people know how to play their champions, right? People don't know what they're doing in lower elos, which basically means that it's not champion diff that determines your games, it's player diff, okay? It's like these champions, we're not playing them because they're sick, amazing champions. We're playing them because they're great tools at feeding you the game. It's like you're trying to eat a bowl of cereal. These champions aren't the bowl of cereal. They're the spoon you eat the cereal with, okay? So just think about it like that, okay? Another point is, if you enjoy playing a specific champion, then by all means, go play that champion and learn the game with that champion. Because at the end of the day, it's a video game, right? And you gotta play what's the most fun for you. This video is basically for people who, are a bit lost and can't really decide for themselves. So, yeah, if you have your own decisions, if you have other champions that you like playing for yourself, then go ahead. But this list is just my opinion, okay? My kind of, I guess, educated opinion about the game, mind you. This video is just going to outline champs that teach good lessons and set good examples, right? So yeah, let's just get right into it. Our first champion is going to be Shen. I know some of you might think, especially some of the higher elo ones from you, might think that Shen is not that good of a champion to get used to top lane with. I would have to disagree with you based on one crucial fact. Shen teaches lessons that all top laners need like desperately, okay? Which is macro and map awareness. Top laners struggle so much with macro and map awareness at like 99% of elos. And Shen, if you just get him as a champion earlier on, you'll have macro and map awareness locked down to a T, right? Because this champion, to play him well, he basically forces you to keep your eyes on the map, to have good macro, to have good awareness of your surroundings, right? He just forces that, which is why, in my opinion, he is one of like the better champions to get used to top lane with, right? Shen is insanely strong pre-6 actually, and he has a lot of prior early, and he can actually get kills against a lot of matchups. If he takes Ignite, he's gonna be so strong in lane pre-6, which like, you know, like it basically makes it so that if you know how to play him well enough, you can actually get fed and like become like an insanely powerful monster, right? Shen teaches decent wave management, rather, I miswrote it. But he teaches decent wave management and good split pushing, right? Wave management on Shen is very important if you're going to teleport without losing much resources from top lane, right? The issue that a lot of top laners in this, meta have is that if you actually go and roam and help your team out, what's going to happen is, like, if the enemy top lane doesn't follow you, that guy is going to push the waves and get to your turret and grab a few plates. And at that point, you are out of the game, right? Unless you get 2-3 kills yourself, your enemy top laner is going to be ahead of you in levels, ahead of you in gold, and experience, okay? You're taking a risk by roaming and helping your team. Shen deals with this problem the least, because he can get to where he needs to instantly, and come in with actually a shield that is a legitimate difference maker, right? You can't tell me that, oh, can't any champion be like Shen because they have teleport? Well, yes, but no, actually. No. Because teleport is in his kit, right? It has a lower cooldown, His ultimate isn't in his kit, it has a lower cooldown. So don't really compare just taking teleport on any top laner against Shen. Shen is the king of impacting the map as a champion on top lane, right? It's because of this reason as to why Shen is one of like the best high elo top laners to have in your champion pool. So if you're a decent player, then make sure you pick up this champion because he's insanely good, okay? And if you're a lower elo player learning the game, Shen is a champion that you can always play because he'll be useful no matter the elo, okay? He's viable at all ranks. Cons. He's a little bit difficult to get into, admittedly. He's not the easiest champion to just slide right into. You need some time and practice with him, and you need some time to get started with like all the focusing and etc. you have to do to have good map awareness. He actually loses to like a lot of bruisers and juggernauts after level 6 because he does not get a combat ultimate, whereas everybody else does, basically, right? So this just leads to situations where you're basically relying entirely on your wave management in order to survive post 6, right? And also, like I said, he's best in higher elos, but the lower you go, the more problems you might have with Shen. The next champion I'm going to suggest, and I know some of you will think that this guy should be higher up, but I don't think so. And this champion is Garen. Garen is probably one of the most easy to pick up champions in the game. He is insanely easy to just slip right into, right? Really easy to just pick up and play. There are like no mechanics you need to learn on this guy, nothing you need to master, and it's not going to take a lot of games for you to actually get good at this champion. What this gives you is the ability to stop worrying about your champion and start focusing on other aspects of League of Legends. Remember, these champions are the spoons we eat the League cereal with, which basically means that Garen is so easy to use that we can focus on like League of Legends itself. We can focus on the cereal and get as much as we can from outside the game, right? Learning a champion and learning League of Legends are two different things, and playing Garen basically eliminates the need for learning your champion, right? He teaches decent macro and trading, and he's also kind of versatile, meaning that he can both split push quite decently because his 1v1 with Ignite and his ultimate is quite, powerful. And he can also like function as a nice backline threat as a flanker, and he's very good at shutting down one person because of his insanely strong execute. Now, here are the reasons as to why I think Garen suffers. First off, he suffers a lot, and I mean a lot, versus competent players. The usefulness of Garen basically takes a nosedive in higher elo, because him not being able to do any complicated mechanics or outplays is a pro because you can more easily get into him, but is a con because you can't really abuse the fact that you're more skilled than your enemy laner, right? Like, there's not much outplaying you can do on this champion. There's not much insane kills you can get on this champion. He's a very one-dimensional, he does only one thing, and if the enemy knows how to play around this one thing, then you're just shit out of luck, basically, right? He's just a very, very one-dimensional champion. He's also a kind of like a generalist, meaning that he's good at a lot of things. He's okay at a lot of things, but he's not the best at anything, right? There's not a one particular thing that Garen actually excels at. And another con that I haven't actually specifically written here is that, which I basically alluded to in this explanation, is that once you get to high elo, this champion is basically like a wasted slot in your champion pool, right? You're better off with other champions, which is why I put him so low on this list, because I want to give you guys champions that you guys can not only pick up, learn top lane with, but also can keep until the end of your league career, I guess. Just like you learn this champion and he's always in your pocket pick. And unfortunately, Garen isn't one of those champions, because once you get to high elo, he starts suffering. Next champion. This might be a bit surprising to some of you to have a tank on this list, but Volibear. Volibear is very, very easy to get into. Kind of like Garen, but he does have his mechanics and etc. that you can do to, to basically be a threat, right? He is insanely good in team fights. Insanely good, okay? Once he wins lane, which he can do quite well because of his abilities and etc., he can snowball quite hard, actually. He does a ton of damage, he's very, very tanky, and he's really strong in extended fights where he can keep spamming his W, right? He's a solid frontline for his team. And remember, top lane often has to pick a champion that functions as a frontline for his team, and Volibear fits this role perfectly. So you're basically like, if you care about your team composition, etc., Volibear is going to fit right into basically any team, right? He's very, very good. He's a very good engaged champion, and, he can be, quite a decent backline threat. His build is a bit flexible, meaning that you can go different. You can go a bit bruiser, you can go a bit AP, you can go a bit tank, all based on what you need in that certain game. You can go Strikebreaker on him, actually. You can go Riftmaker if you want to go just really 1v9 carry and you're instantly fed. You can go Chempunk, Chem Tank, not Chem... Chem Tank. I hate these new items so much. Like the one that gives you move speed, like the Tank Mythic. Anyway, right? He promotes great trading, he promotes good macro, and he promotes great teamfight positioning. And like I mentioned before, he is a very, very strong laner. His weaknesses are he's kind of weak when you have to play him from behind. Let's say you lose the lane already, right? You've already lost the lane. You kind of get to a point where you're not actually capable of doing that much, because you have to at least be even with this guy. It's true, he is quite strong in early skirmishes, etc., right? He can do a lot in early river fights and etc. But if you don't play him to the point where you're if you play him and you just lose lane, you're not going to be able to do much in the game. All you're going to do is basically be a CC bot. And honestly, Volibear doesn't have the best CC for his team. He's only a threat when he's ahead or at least even, right? He requires team play to win games. So if you are playing with teammates that are not good with macro, that are not good with team fights, you have to be the leader. You have to ping them back from, stupid fights. You have to ping them back from overstaying. You have to ping good fights. You basically have to make sure that you're the leader of the team and you're telling your team what to do. And also, Volibear is not the best at split pushing, right? He's a very like on the scale of split pushy and team fighty, he's very much over here on the team fight part of the scale because he's a very like tanky, very frontline champion, but he kind of gets outscaled by a lot of these bruisers like Fiora and etc. who are basically built to 1v1 and etc. Right? And honestly, even if you do split push Volibear, you're wasting your power because Volibear, like making use of him in a team fight, is what he's made for, right? So use him properly, basically. Our next champion, and this is our favorite champion in the game, I guess, is Darius. Darius is, in my opinion, the second best champion to learn top lane with because of these reasons. Number one, he is a very, very strong laner. Until you get to high elo, and high elo is like D2 and above, by the way, okay? So until you get to that elo, you can win any lane, okay? Any lane can be won by Darius if you're better than your enemy. And this is for 99% of your elos, you can basically win any lane if you play it properly, if you wave manage properly, and etc. And once you win lane, Darius can snowball out of control so insanely hard because you're just going to be cleaning up those team fights, like just getting a bunch of kills every team fight and just snowballing into an insane monster that just cannot be put down, you know? He is very strong in early fights and skirmishes because earlier on into the game, nobody does that much damage. People do an insane amount of damage, but earlier on into the game, nobody can one-shot Darius. What this means is as long as you're keeping yourself on one target, you are guaranteed to have Noxian Might, after which you can do a flash Q, hit as many people as possible, and do a ton of damage, and basically solo win the skirmish, unless you're taking a stupid fight, basically, right? Darius is an insane backline threat. Unlike some of these other champions, where they're also backline threats, Darius can just vaporize entire backlines at once because of how his kit works, right? He can 2v1 ganks until you get to high elo and junglers know how to play, because lots of the time in lower elos, jungle players don't know how to jungle, right? They're basically going to have bad clears, they're not going to know how to gank, and they're going to leave themselves in positions for you to just 2v1 them and kill them both, right? He promotes insanely good wave control, great macro, because you got to move around on the map and be there in the team fights where you need to be. Good decision making, like I said, you know, macro is also good for predicting the jungler because Darius struggles against junglers, and he promotes you to think about the map on the whole like macro scale so that you can avoid jungle ganks. And he promotes really good positioning because he has no mobility, right? So if you position poorly on him, you get punished. And the biggest pro of all is Rhoku's content. I know this is somewhat of a meme pro, but basically speaking, like, I think you can find this kind of content that I do for Darius for Shen maybe, but you're gonna struggle to find this in-depth champion guides and knowledge for most champions in the game, right? There are only some champions that have insanely good content creators. Like, I'm not calling myself insanely good, right? I'm just making the content that needs to be made because no one's doing it. But basically, you can't find this kind of content for most other champions, right? You can do it for Camille with Drutut, you can do it for Shen with, I think, XP2, but I'm not too sure. And you can do Darius with me, but, you know, some other champions you just can't find it, okay? But yeah, that's a pro. Cons. Darius is insanely bad when you have to play him from behind, right? He's also not the easiest to master, right? He's not difficult to pick up, but truly mastering Darius takes like a bunch of skill and time. And also, compared to the previous seasons, he's far less independent than he used to be. He's way more team reliant right now. And I think the biggest problem for Darius right now, for you guys, is his insanely high ban rate. Darius is virtually impossible to one-trick in Gold and Plat if you're not dodging like 100 LP worths of LP like every day, right? He just gets banned so often that some days you can get like 3-4 games of Darius, but some days you can barely get one. And that one game you're gonna have to play it into a counter pick because they're just not gonna play Darius like for on like a proper top lane fight that lets you, take control of the game, right? So his high ban rate makes it so that he can't be our number one pick. But that is no issue because I have another insanely good number one pick that is one of the best teachers in top lane, and that champion, Tryndamere. In my opinion, Tryndamere is the best top laner to get into, and he does struggle sometimes in the meta. But like I said, you don't need to care about the meta. You gotta care about how well you know the game, and this champion will help you out with that. First off, he is quite easy to get into. There are some difficult parts of him. That's like auto spacing, knowing when to all in, but you can argue that about most champions, right? Tryndamere's mechanics are quite rudimentary and basic, and it's just about auto attacking, so he's quite easy to get into. Tryndamere scales insanely well, right? And this is a big positive because a lot of the champions that I mentioned, if you get put behind, if you get camped or whatever, you're just done for. You're done. You're basically just behind until you luckily get 2-3 kills in a team fight. Not Tryndamere. With Tryndamere, you can basically just farm up and just be super strong anyway, right? With Tryndamere, it's just a matter of time before you become powerful. He is one of the best split pushers in the game because his 1v1, once he gets all of his items and etc., is kind of unbeatable, right? He just kills people in 2-3 crits, and he can do an insane amount of work. And once he gets his crit items going, his low E cooldown makes him insanely hard to catch, which allows him to go for split push flank plays and just go for a lot of plays, right? Unlike a lot of the hyperscalers, Tryndamere can get a lot of kills in lane and just snowball out of control, right? Tryndamere is capable of actually just destroying lanes when you basically play it right. Let's say you get level 6, you're against someone level 5, and as a Tryndamere you can kill them under their turret, right? And you just go for that dive, Knowing these kinds of things that you can learn with this champion can actually lead to you picking up a bunch of kills in lane. And level 1 and 2, he also has insane kill pressure if you can get your Fury stacks up, right? He does not actually suffer from issues like ban rate. Compared to Darius, he doesn't suffer from ban rate issues at all. You can almost always play Tryndamere. There's just nothing, no aspects outside the game that stop you from playing Tryndamere, because you can basically one trick him to any elo. And I mean any elo because there are Tryndamere players in every single elo, and this is a champion you can keep with you for as long as you find him fun. And this is the part that takes my attention because Tryndamere promotes almost every single thing that a top laner needs to know, right? He promotes insanely good CSing. He promotes wave control. He promotes trading well. He promotes macro, right? Macro map awareness, because as a split pusher, you need insane macro and insane map awareness to be truly effective. And Tryndamere, very well, promotes these kinds of nice habits and these nice basic things in the game. The cons of Tryndamere, they're not very much. There's not a lot of cons with Tryndamere, but I'll name a few from the top of my head that I didn't write here. But basically, the biggest con Tryndamere has, and this is also a con that Darius has, but in super high elo, let's say you're above Diamond 2, you're Master, Grandmaster, Challenger, if you're in those elos, so this is for guys in those elos, there are some team compositions and some champions that just make life hell for you, right? Some team comps, you just have to dodge them if you're a Tryndamere one trick, okay? So that's one of the weaknesses of Tryndamere. Lower elos, like I said, team comps and etc. matter less because people fundamentally have no idea what they're doing. The other con is Tryndamere can potentially promote very stupid tactics because he is a very bash your head against the enemy kind of champion where you just keep fighting and fighting and fighting and you can win, right? So as long as you're not doing stupid things like that, as long as you're properly learning the game, Tryndamere can be an excellent teacher of top lane. So yeah, guys, that is pretty much it for this video. I thought this was helpful to you guys. I will, again, the link I left to my champion tier list will be in the description if you guys want to know what I think of all champions in solo queue. But these are the champions that, like I said, if you don't know top lane already, or if you know it already but just not well enough, these are the champions that you should be trying out to see if, trying out to see if you can integrate them into your champion pool to see, how well you can work with them, right? So anyway, that is it for this video. I read some comments in my last presentation telling that, the background was too bright for people who are trying to read this presentation and stuff in the night, so I changed that. I hope that's better for you guys. But anyway, I am done with the video, so I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out. By the way, check me out on Twitch. I'm streaming again. See ya.